Good morning. Welcome to Unstuck Kids Speak Out, episode 8. Happy spring to you, and I hope you're having a good day or good morning wherever you're watching this. And if you're watching the replay, welcome too. My name is Chris Barr. I'm producer of Unstuck, an OCD Kids movie. And we've been doing this Kids Speak Out episode once a month where I get a chance to talk with some OCD experts, some kids who give their story and share what they've learned and things they've gone through in order to kind of recognize, understand, get educated, and eventually through therapy, overcome a lot of their OCD fears, OCD being obsessive compulsive disorder. So today on our episode, you'll notice a slightly different format. We're a little more widescreen because I don't have to invite anyone into the broadcast today because I have two of my favorite people in the entire world. And given that it's Father's Day tomorrow, this is an appropriate episode to do this on. Both my daughters, Vanessa and Charlotte, will be each taking a turn in here. And we'll be asking them different questions. It's been a while since we've talked to them, so they'll go through some of the things that initially we talked about and some of the things you might have seen in the film, but also going to talk a lot about what's going on recently. So if you are watching this now, feel free to ask your comments. We have a scroll here so we can answer comments as it goes along. And I'm going to invite Vanessa in right now, and she'll be our first guest. Hi, sweetie.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Did you have a good morning?
I did.
Oh, good. And you have breakfast?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, good. All right. So let's get right to it. The film has been finished for over a year. In July, it'll have been released for over a year. And in that time, you guys have spoke in San Francisco. You've spoken in Brooklyn. You spoke to a bunch of different conferences via video chat in Nashville, and we went to London, and we just did Brooklyn. What have you learned in the last year about talking about OCD to other kids?
That was unexpected. I've never gotten that question before.
Oh, okay.
I just learned that everybody has a wide variety of OCD worries, and that your worries seem specific to you, and sometimes it's hard to see how other people are afraid of certain things, but all in relativity, because I've been worried about a few things that I know some of my friends can't imagine being worried about. I've also learned that everybody has their own voice and they speak out how they want to, and they're all really thankful for the film. Yeah.
Okay, well, let's get into some certain things. So one of the things that we didn't talk about, well, I guess we kind of talked about it a little bit. Charlotte talks about it a little bit in the film, but we don't go into it too much, is Vanessa has a fear of throw up. And so recently, over the last couple months, we had a major issue in our house that we had to deal with and go through the same thing we went through every time an issue comes up, exposure therapy, hierarchies, and that had to deal with your sister throwing up. Do you want to talk about that and how it came about and how it made you feel?
Sure. I had my bat mitzvah in April, and before that, Charlotte got sick. She threw up, and I couldn't go within 3 feet of her for about a month. And
why were you afraid to go? What was going through? What did you think in your mind that you couldn't go near her? Why was that?
I thought that I would get contaminated, that I would get sick on my bat mitzvah if I went near her. And so as soon as my bat mitzvah was over, I was able to go right back near her, and I was able to touch her, and I was able to play with her again.
And what were some of the things when we would go to exposures? Feel free to, anybody has any questions, feel free to add them. We'll see them here and happy to answer them. But what was going through your mind when we would say, okay, Vanessa, come on, you can do this, or that you knew you had to, that this was an OCD fear. But can you describe how it made you feel when you had to do an exposure, or go near her, or um, use a washcloth that you should use, or something like that?
It's really hard to describe, but it felt wrong. I thought I was gonna get ill. I thought that because of the OCD exposures that everybody was making me do, I was gonna get sick from it, and that was gonna have a big impact on a day that I'd been working hard towards for years. Um, and it just it was emotional too, cause it's my sister, and it puts a lot of pressure on her. If I can't go near her, I can't touch her, and it makes her feel bad. It makes her feel weird. It makes her feel like something's wrong with her, and I didn't want her to feel that way. But at the same time, my OCD was telling me that I couldn't like go near her and comfort her, and all I could tell her was, "Don't blame me, blame my OCD."
And it was a very stressful time for you because you were preparing for a big moment. Do you think that contributed to um, a, a bigger than normal fear, bigger than normal worry?
Um, my OCD targeted the thing that I was looking forward to most, which was my bat mitzvah, and I've been working toward it for like 7 years. And then, like weeks before, my sister gets sick, and I start freaking out, and I'm like, "Oh my God, what if I get sick? I have to stay away from her. I have to avoid her at all causes until my bat mitzvah is here, and I know that it's all going to be all right, and so I can have a good time, and so this doesn't ruin it." And my mind was just rambling on like that. Um, so didn't. I didn't want to go near her for that reason. But it definitely made it a bigger fear because the closer that we got to my bat mitzvah, the harder it was to. Sorry, the harder it was to like do my exposures, and because there was like a time limit on this worry, I had to get it over with before my bat mitzvah, or as much as I could, because there are not a lot of chances where I can work with this OCD fear of vomit. Yeah.
And what were some of the things that we needed to do and that you worked on? So when you have a big OCD worry, one of the things that you do is you make a hierarchy. Can you explain kind of exposure therapy is kind of Vanessa and had to kind of deal with and work up to exposing herself to the thing she feared the most, which was her sister and the fear of vomit. So what were some of the things, do you remember, that we wrote on this particular hierarchy chart?
I still have the hierarchy chart. Do you want me to get it?
Sure. Um, and a hierarchy basically, folks, is you making a list of things that from like 1 to 10 of the things that you fear or things that would be easier for you to do versus things that were harder. So clearly in this example, what would be really, really hard is for Vanessa to like hug her sister and be okay with it. Hey, David. That would be the hardest. That would be a 10. Another 10 would be to kind of like lay on her bed. It was easier for her to like work, like eat across the room from her. That was like a 3 or 4.
So I don't have it.
Okay, but you could describe describe some of the things that we did. What did we start off with? Do you remember?
I do. We started off with like her. Okay, so our dinner table, I couldn't sit at the same dinner table with her. And so I would eat in the living room, and every day I would get like a foot closer to her until she would be at this side. And we have a big dinner table, and I would be at this side, and then I would sit here, and then I would sit there right next to her.
Which is where you normally sit.
Mm-hmm. And then we make a lot of slime. So what we would do is she would touch it, and then I would have to touch it. And that was actually harder than the dinner table for me, because I just felt like it was sticky, so it would stick to more germs. And also, I had to ride in the car with her places.
That was kind of like a forced exposure. There was nothing we could do
choice.
about that. Like we had to. So actually, so the first time we rode in the car, what did you bring with you?
I bring a blanket, and I strung it so that there was a barrier between us, and I would move to the exact like.
Hey,
I would be like
hey,
over
Morgan.
here, or she'd be like there.
And in your mind, what did you think the blanket did?
Set a barrier between us.
And now that you removed from that, do you think that was a realistic thing that happened?
It was not realistic whatsoever.
But at the time, you believed, or
my mind told me that it would help.
That's kind of one of the OCD tricks. And eventually, we got to the point where you were able to like touch your sister, right? Where did we?
Yeah, I would touch her, and then I would wait like a minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then my parents would start giving us rewards, and I would hug her and then like stand like this still for like 10 seconds and then go and like take a shower, wash my hands. I would wash my whole arms, and yeah.
And then so we had kind of work on two different things, which was one, the exposure of touching your sister, and the other of handling that anxiety and dealing with it.
So, also, because it was so hard for me, they set an award to make me work harder. And it was that they would buy me and my sister, because it was affecting her too, New phones. And so they said iPhone 7s, and then looked at the prices and bought us both iPhone 8s as a surprise. But I worked up hard to getting that, and I didn't earn like full rights of my phone until after the worry was over.
Right. Charlotte can talk about that a little bit, but Charlotte was able to use the phone immediately. Vanessa needed to kind of work up and wait because we still wanted her to continue. And, this was a tough situation because, like she described earlier, as soon as the bat mitzvah was done, like the day after, it was like nothing had happened. And, in our minds, OCD had kind of won a battle because it was very stress-induced. She still was able to do the therapy. And another difference for us, and a lot of times, was there was a physical reaction this time. She would... when she would touch her sister, you would like hold your hands and shake them like
I would scratch, I would hold them like this, and I would do this. I would like fiddle with my hands, and I would do weird things. I would go like this, and then eventually I just had to like stay in the position. I would hug her, and then just be like, I was thinking.
And why did you think you had to stay in that position? Can you think back to that moment? What were you thinking in your head? Like, why?
I was thinking, I gotta get this off. I need to rub my hands on something. I gotta wash my hands. I gotta do something to get off these germs.
So it was like your hands were like contaminated?
Yes.
Okay. And was it painful? Did it feel painful? Did it hurt to stand there like that?
It didn't feel painful. It felt like dirty. Like, I would touch her. I'm sorry. I would touch her, and I would feel like I wasn't clean. I needed to wash off because, like, there are germs on me that could get me sick. And it was kind of just disgusting.
And that was kind of what was going on in her head. Hey folks, welcome to Unstuck Kids Speak Out, episode 8. This is my daughter Vanessa. We got a sister's episode, if you will. Her sister Charlotte's going to join in a little while, but we're starting off with Vanessa, and we're kind of catching up on some of the things that have been happening in our house recently. A lot of people talk about OCD, and we talk about this in the film. Is OCD, are you cured from it? And sometimes people go through highs and lows, or times that's harder. Vanessa has learned tools to fight her OCD so that when things come up, and they still have done in the year or two since the film's been finished, things have still come up. And when they do, we go back to the things that we learned, and she goes back to the things you learned. In fact, this week we've done a few things, right? Her sister had a sleepover at somebody's house. You had to worry about sleeping by yourself.
Yeah.
It was really fun at 3 in the morning when she woke up, right? So what did we do at 3 in the morning?
I had watched The Criminal Minds,
which was an exposure initially, that
but
show
then,
that turned into a show she loves now, which is kind of funny.
I like how they solve the mysteries, but we had watched a scary one about 3 friends being trapped in a dungeon, and 2 of them being forced to kill one of them, and I was freaked out. And in the episode, the person had gotten into someone's house. I got into bed and I was all alone in my room, and I just sat there like staring at the windows and the doors and making sure that nothing happened. And then I had to take like melatonin, and my parents had to come in and comfort me, and I had to like draw
Hi, Jonathan.
OCD work. And it's a good episode, but it's very scary. And
yeah, we try there are some episodes based on the description that we don't let them watch. Some we do, and halfway through we're like, ooh, that was not enough, but we deal with it. It's an exposure. And then, so what did we do in the middle of the night? What were some of the things that you were doing to kind of get yourself to fall asleep?
I would try and close my eyes, and then I would just think, what if there's somebody in the room? And then I would open my eyes again. And then I would, I'd turn around and stare at the windows and the doors, and I'd be like, no, gotta distract myself from this. And then the thought would keep on coming back. So I finally fell asleep after taking some melatonin, and it took me like an hour and a half. And then I was sleeping, and I woke up at 3. And then...
So what did we do?
Okay, so it was especially dark in our room at 3. And it was so scary for me. I basically sat there like, I don't want to make a sound, because what if there's somebody in the room? I need to hide under my blankets. I need to find a strategy to get out of this room. And then, so I ended up calling my parents. Then I woke up my dad, and he came in, and he was like, Vanessa, you're fine.
I'm not very good. I'm not very good at exposure therapy at 3 a.m.
He was like, Vanessa, you're fine. And then he sat at the edge of my bed, and he was like, what can we do to fix this worry? And I just basically, I was so tired by that time. And so like, when I was alone in my room, I was not tired at all. But as soon as he came in, I felt like safer.
And so we got your journal, and what did you start doing? You actually said you had to do something.
Yeah.
Which was what?
Which was what? So I drew a picture of what I was afraid of, and then I completely made it like funny. So like,
we drew the
3 friends.
We drew
and
the
then
3
the
friends
killer,
from the episode and the killer.
Right? I don't even remember what I drew. I think one was a lion, one was a clown, and one was, I don't know. I made it completely irrelevant to my worry, and that just helped me like get the thought out of my head. So yeah.
Yeah, it's like one of the tricks that she learned, and that seems to work for her, is that she draws the things she fears, and then she makes it stupid, funny, silly, writes words that are silly, like, she might write killer, and the killer might say fart killer, or, she might be, draw spaghetti on its head, or things like that, and we make it not so scary. And eventually you were able to go to sleep.
I was. I didn't get a lot of sleep, but I got like maybe 4 or 5 hours of sleep. I was very tired the next day, but I got to sleep the next night.
So Nancy, thank you for your question. Do we have any tips for parents to help their kids discuss obsessive thoughts? Yeah, I think that you know your child pretty well, and so observe things that they might if they're talkative, Vanessa is very much, as you can tell, and she's pretty much open about discussing things, so we can have a conversation with her about what she's going through and eventually figure out what's going on. Um, Sometimes it would be art that she would draw if she had trouble figuring something out. Sometimes she would we in the beginning actually. No, you don't have to get it, but like we had a journal, and she would write in her journal, and that would be when she was afraid to talk to us about it. Writing in the journal seemed to help. Um, or writing a list, that was really helpful for us so that we can kind of understand what was going on. So those were just three things that she liked or could do or liked to do and was agreed to do. So whether it was talking to her, sometimes she would write in her journal or just write notes down. And then sometimes she would draw art. I mean, also there could be a chance that if there's siblings involved and she's closer with a sibling, and she's okay talking, your child is okay talking to the sibling, sometimes the sibling can be the mediator in between and just say, look, she's feeling this, she's feeling this. That could work. But so my suggestion would be to maybe give the power to the child and figure out what they are most comfortable talking to, especially in the beginning, because they don't know what the heck's going on. And so you're just trying to get to the bottom of things and understand how you're going to work on treatment, and you've got to kind of zero in on what the big issues are, what the worst issue is, and try to tackle that first. As my wife is chiming in from the other side of the house, sometimes not talking about it can be an OCD challenge. That's good, Jonathan. Like a sketchbook. That's a good idea. I remember, Vanessa. One of the things that I think we found in the film was that all the kids could draw, and we actually ended up, after we filmed them, we actually ended up going back to them and saying, "Can you kind of draw this scene in your head?" This is like with Vanessa, it was the trees, and with Jake, it was kind of this clock. So we were kind of trying to get to the emotional
Jake,
thing that was going
fun
with
fact,
it.
Jake made the look.
Yeah. And so that was the word this week. Last night we had a big exposure, also vomit inducing. We happened to be. It's been a fun spring for us. Also around the same time that Vanessa, we were going through the getting ready for the bat mitzvah, and she was having issues with her sister. We went to a restaurant, and someone happened to throw up near us, and so we are actually working up to going into the restaurant. Vanessa, last night, you okay me talking about this?
I'll talk.
Okay.
I would step into the restaurant for a 5-minute timer, and last night I did 10 minutes, and it was really, really hard. And I was crying, and I was acting up, and I was banging on the wall. I couldn't stop myself from thinking, like, contaminated.
So we worked up to 10. We went up to 10 minutes in the restaurant. We're standing at a certain part right by the door, I get a drink, and she was able to do like 5 minutes. Went outside for 2 or 3, came back in, set a timer, did another 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
It got too much for her. She went back outside. So we're kind of working up to, and I guess Nancy, to maybe this kind of deals with your question a little bit too, is also when you're dealing with exposures. You got to be open and flexible about how things are working. And I think what happened last night was realize maybe we went a little too far too fast. And so this type of restaurant has an open space that leads outside. And what we talked about with Vanessa is maybe and there's like outdoor seating. And what we thought we would start doing is that like maybe we would be inside the restaurant and she would be right outside, right by us. And that which way she could start. And maybe she could stand longer there and start kind of outside of the restaurant and then work her way in. And maybe that would be if she spends a little more time, but she's still close to the restaurant, it might be a little easier for her to kind of handle. Maybe it's more of an 8 or 7 anxiety as opposed to a 32, which was last night. But she still got through it, and she did really well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just something you kind of have to work up to, exposure therapy. And in your mind, in that restaurant, what's wrong with the restaurant?
Like, it's like the same as Charlotte was. It's contaminated. It's gonna get me sick. I'm not gonna like being sick. I'm gonna get contaminated. I'm gonna be all dirty.
So the feeling you have of like the way you can describe being contaminated is dirty, right? It's like you had just walked through a field of mud or something? Is
Yeah.
that type of dirty and grimy?
Yeah, and like it feels like it's hard to describe.
Yeah, that's
Like if you put your hand in mud, right? And then someone starts to tickle you, feels like that.
okay.
It's weird.
That's a good description.
Like yeah, like the pins and needles. It feels like that. It feels like you don't want it there.
So we've been working with her therapist on different vomit themed therapies, right? There's a lot. YouTube is a fantastic resource for exposure and response prevention therapy.
So for vomit exposures, we watch vomit videos, and they're disgusting, but they work, and I can get more use.
Yeah, it's amazing what that search engine, the YouTube search engine, can find.
Like a milk challenge.
Yeah, do you have suggestions for people like to do exposures?
Look up snake vomit. Snake vomit is the most disgusting thing on earth.
Yeah, is that worse than watching somebody else like the kids do the milk challenge? Okay.
Snake vomit, they vomit like whole animals.
So you can gather why that could be a nice exposure. If anybody has any questions, feel free to throw in. Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting, Morgan. I think the cloud stuck on your hand is like that. That kind of helps me visualize it because I'm always trying to figure out why what's going on. Thanks, Epi. So Vanessa is gonna jump out for a little bit now, and I'm gonna have her sister Charlotte come on in, and we can kind of flip the script a little bit and kind of talk about the other side of it, the person who was affected by OCD and her sister's fear and worry. Come on in, sweetie. Kind of roving chairs. We have Unstuck Kids Speak Out, episode 8. This is my daughter, Charlotte. Charlotte is a sibling of somebody with OCD. She was very active early on, demanded she get involved. This is like, we're going on 5 years now, and she demanded at 6 years old, I want to know what it is. Tell me what it is. How can I be involved? And so she's been pretty heavily involved in OCD therapy the whole time, which is fantastic. So, you know, we just went through a thing with Vanessa in March. And how did that make you feel when your sister was afraid of you?
It was very stressful, and I felt like I was I started like getting more emotional because I didn't have somebody like to play with and most of the things, and like she couldn't go 5 feet like near me without like screaming and running away to the bathroom to wash her hands or something. So like if she went like that, she would like scream and shout and run as fast as she can like there's a fire, and go to the bathroom and like scrub her hands. Like if she doesn't scrub her hands, it'll be like the death of her. So that was really like could you please dial it down? Like, am I that bad? It was also hard because she said a lot that it wasn't her, it was the OCD, and it was hard to sort out which part of it was the OCD and which part of it wasn't. I felt like it was all her most of the time.
So you had a hard time, like, do you think that your sister was blaming OCD and it was really...
Yes.
Okay. And did you think that she was trying hard enough, or that... No?
I did.
Well, that's okay. I mean, it's okay to feel that way. It's hard for, you know, you've never experienced that, the same type of fear and hurt that Vanessa has, so it's hard for all of us to kind of figure out, is this real? Is she just using it as an excuse? Things like that. And so when you have to be the subject, when you have to be the exposure, and mommy and daddy have to say to you, okay, Charlotte, you know, do you like that?
No.
I expected that answer. And so, but what makes you do it? What makes you say okay to it?
Because well, sometimes you get rewards, and also, because like with the part where she couldn't touch me, I was affected by that. And like Vanessa has another fear of getting me angry at her, and I'm affected by that. Even though I don't want her to break my rules that I personally have, I um. But anyway, I think I do a pretty good job of getting mad at her, so I don't think we need to get into that. But I don't know. I guess that's what drives me for it, because it affects me, not just her.
Yeah, it can be tough. Hi, Bridget. Just to answer your question, there is a private therapy that we have private therapists here in Manhattan that we've seen for a while. But she also did a couple of years ago. There was a free group therapy treatment at Mount Sinai Hospital in New York, and that was like a 12-week session. And then there was also some summer camps that she went with some kids there, and that's where actually we met Jake, who's also in the film, at this OCD camp, which is run by Dr. Riz Rojas. And Dr. Rojas was a huge reason why Unstuck got made. So we are fortunate that our family found her, and also, the film found her and all those things. So it was kind of a combination of private therapy, but there also was some group therapy that she dealt with and still does. All right, you. When you are asked to tag along, like last night, with Vanessa's therapy, because sometimes it's not like Charlotte can stay home. We have to go to the restaurant and deal with this. How do you cope with it? How do you deal with it?
Well, I'm mostly just frustrated because I think, like, why couldn't, if she has to get afraid of one restaurant, why can't it at least be a good restaurant? Why does it have to be a disgusting restaurant? That's mostly what I think about when I'm there.
So you wish it was a 5-star?
Yes.
Okay. You wish it was like an ice cream store?
Yes.
That makes sense. It just happens to be.
It has to be afraid of a restaurant.
It has to be. It's like a bar, that we heard had good burgers. And anyway, so it's a bar, which they don't like going into, and you prefer it to be like the ice cream store, or yeah.
Well, or like sushi or something. Like, I'm fine with all of that, but why that store? But another thing I think about, I was like, wow, this affects her a lot. Cause like I see her like fidgeting and like scratching herself and like hitting the walls. I'm like, Vanessa, could you stop? It's shaking the wall. But I don't really know what to do, because she's just like so freaked out, and it's like she's trapped in a confined space, yes, almost, and like trying to like find something.
Yeah, it's like hard to like get through to her. Just take a second to say this is Unstuck Kids Speak Out episode 8. This is my daughter Charlotte. Unstuck is a film about kids with OCD. Feel free to throw in any comments, questions, share this out. Charlotte is the sibling, so if you want to ask any sibling questions, feel free, or grab a sibling and share your advice. And then in a little while we'll have both of them come on if you want to throw some comments out. And we're also live here on Instagram. We're trying double live. We got because I don't have to have anybody video in. I can try 2 things at once. What was I saying? What have you learned? Just like I was talking to Vanessa at the beginning, we've been, the film's been out for almost a year. You've had a chance to talk about your situation with other people. What are the things that you've observed going to OCD conferences, talking to people online, things like that, when we've done Skype therapy and Skype sessions?
Well, I've learned that the siblings' point of view isn't really heard a lot, which I like. The fact that I can speak about my story, because a lot of people are only like, oh, we want the people with OCD to talk because they have more experience. It actually affects the family a lot too, not just the person with OCD. And also, I thought like everybody's OCD was like Vanessa's OCD at first. now I definitely know that's not true. But it was really interesting to see like how these people like did exposures to do like to get over their fears. Like Holden, he had a funny story about the bodybuilder like picking him up, and like some of them can be humorous, but other ones are like really serious.
And if you just, how would you say, uh, and you can be open and honest when you answer this, how would you say that your parents have dealt with OCD and handling you and your sister's relationship?
I think it's been pretty good. I don't like some of the things you suggest, like breaking my rules, but that's because they're my rules, so I get it. Um, but I think you've dealt with it pretty well, and you've definitely got Vanessa the help she needs to deal with her OCD.
Have you have you learned, or are there any things, books or people that you've talked to, have you learned anything new about OCD?
Um, well, that's a hard one. I've learned a lot of new things, but they're mostly about the experience that people have with OCD. Um, and I've also learned that a lot of people stereotype OCD to be like, um, I heard someone in my class, I forget who it was, who was like, do you have OCD or something? I was like, what do you think that means? It was like obsessive cleaning disorder. And I'm like, oh my god. And then I sort of like then give him an educational um like talk about it. Lecture, yeah. Um and so I don't really like it when people do that. I know my mom had someone like who came to apply for a job, and she was like, I wish I had OCD. My mom was like, as someone of a parent who has a child with OCD, I don't think you want it. Um, so yeah.
What about this question here? Do you ever get embarrassed by the things that Vanessa might do in public, like last night?
Um, yeah, sometimes because she was like hitting walls and like she was like looking like everywhere, like somebody's gonna jump out at her. I was like, okay.
Yeah,
Um,
it is it there. I think I was too, certainly thinking about, um, given where we were last night. A person walks in with two kids into a bar, and one of them's standing at a wall, and the other one's just playing with her phone, trying not to look. And and I got a beer. So it was like a dad brings his kids to a bar so he could have a beer. Meanwhile, one of them's standing in the corner, like freaking out. So the whole scene is comical, from a certain way. But I think you just gotta, like, at the same time, part of me says I don't care what anybody else is thinking, what anybody else is doing. If the bar had a problem with it, I would certainly talk to them about it. And we might get to a point where we actually have to talk to the owner and say, look, can we do this? Are you okay with this? If we come in every week or whatever, just to get it done. Um, but yeah, it's hard not to. I don't. For me, embarrassed isn't the wrong word. It's just like, there's that natural human emotion of like, are people staring at you? But I think more concerned for Vanessa, and hoping my focus is more like, I wish that this wasn't, uh, the anxiety wasn't as high as it gets. And I would love to, at this point, to have her, when she has a new fear, to get over it faster than she generally does, and that's just my issue. And you just have to trust the process, trust that it has to keep doing, and your job as a parent is to keep going, and to help them keep doing exposures. Like, we had Vanessa set up an alarm on her phone every night, so like every night at 7:30 or something, it goes off. So it's like, okay, it's exposure time. On weekends, we're able to do more of the physical exposures of go to restaurants or things like that, so that we can handle that when there's time. But it's just like, our job is to be more the taskmasters and the teachers. Time to do your exposures. Thanks for the question, Bridget. Anybody has questions, feel free on Instagram too. Hey, Folks over here, thanks for joining. Um, so the question, if you can tell us what you do to help find help dealing with anxiety and OCD as a family.
Like my mom commented also, you need to find like the funny things in it. Like Vanessa used to, like a long time ago, like maybe 3 or 4 years ago, she used to think she was seeing goblins and they were gonna come out. So she would like draw them, and then she would draw like a bunch of funny things on them. Like she would draw like weird hats and hair, and she gave like one of them fart shoes, like that when you stepped, it like made a farting sound. And like she gave one of them like a pigtail, and so that helped her cope with it.
You didn't like pigtails?
No, I thought I would see goblins, pigtails, and candles.
I would say that we had to. The main thing that we did was to read as much as we could about it, learn as much as we could about it, and how therapy worked and what treatment worked. We were fortunate very early on to understand that a therapist needed to do something called exposure and response prevention therapy, and that was the major kind of gold standard treatment for OCD, so that we knew when we were interviewing therapists, that was like the first question, like, okay, yes, you treat OCD, yes, you do ERP, yes, you do CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but then we had to dig deeper and find out, like, well, are you just doing talk therapy, are you doing play therapy? And if they did that, and then they didn't go any further, we knew that wasn't the right therapist for us. So we kind of had to be the advocates, if you will, and make sure we were getting what books and the online articles would say would be the best treatment. And then you kind of have to feel out your relationship with the therapist and understand, are they involved in it? You certainly got involved. She wanted to read books about it. She wanted to understand like what her sister was going through and things like that. So you tackle it. And one of the things I want to remind everyone is that it's not a quick fix. There's not a 2 months and you're fine. If a book says, oh, it'll be 6 to 8 weeks or 2 months, that isn't necessarily indicative of your experience or what you're going through or what the kid's going through. We're 5 years in, we're still dealing with issues. We've had huge highs and lows, major successes, and then stumbling blocks here and there. And like I said, it's all about understanding and adjusting when you have something new, or when you have a new fear, a new worry, and then a new, how you handle it. And if certain thing that was working before isn't working again, figuring out what else could. And can you make it creative? Can you make it fun? They used to toss clothes around the house that Vanessa thought was contaminated. We did bowling with chemicals. We set up all the like Lysol and bleach and all this stuff like it was bowling, and then we would bowl a ball, and that was like what we did in our house.
We also
hey Treya.
We didn't do it. Oh yeah, hi Treya. Oh, and thanks Nancy for your comment. But one of the other things that Vanessa did in her OCD support group that she did over the summer with Dr. Rojas was she had a chocolate mousse food fight, which I'm guessing was really fun. I was very jealous I wasn't there.
So we just have a question on Instagram. Are there any other diagnoses that we've not anything that has complicated, like major comorbid issues yet for Vanessa? So in that way, we've been somewhat fortunate. But we do know a lot of people who have both, or might have like Tourette's and OCD, or autism, or Asperger's and OCD, things like that. So we understand that sometimes they go hand in hand. And speaking from people that I've talked to, when they have a comorbid, a lot of times it has to deal with like what do you treat first. And sometimes you treat with OCD for a while, and then if the OCD symptoms kind of wane, then you go treat the other issue, and then you're kind of juggling back and forth. But that's kind of what I've observed of parents of kids who have like two different things. Is there another question?
No, I just like this kind.
Okay, you can like it. Okay. You're welcome, Jonathan. We appreciate it. We we were helped by a lot of people through our journey. And, you know, in a lot of ways, the film is a chance to give back and to educate other people and give people a resource that we wish we had seen when when OCD really entered our life. So that was a big thing for Kelly and myself when just like even talking about making the film before it was anything else. I do want to take a chance to have Vanessa come in if anybody wants to throw out some last minute questions, and remind everybody that while right now Unstuck isn't available for everybody to see just yet, it will be very soon. And in fact, if you want to sign up for, we're doing a free webinar with the Peace of Mind Foundation in 2 weeks on June 27th at 5:30 New York time, 4:30 Central. And we'll be showing the film, and these two, along with Jake and Ariel and Sarah and Holden, will all be on Zoom, so you'll be able to ask questions for them. It'll kind of be like a giant panel, which will be awesome, and that's a good way to see the film. And then in a few weeks, we are going to announce and launch a free streaming program, not free, a streaming option for the film that everybody can see, as well as a couple different languages. We're having the film translated into a few different languages, so that way it can have more of an international appeal.
Wait, we're all going?
We're all going where?
Wait, we're all going to be on FaceTime together? Wait, what did you just say?
It's a Zoom meeting. That's the thing.
What? Am I going to be there?
Yes.
Cool.
Okay. Hey, Megan, nice to see you. You might not completely understand. Yes. How do you explain? That's a tough one. So Megan's question is regarding when you have family members that may not understand or may not believe. How can you try to convince them, or how can you try to see your side of the story? And the tough answer is there might not be anything that you can do. However, so that's just say, like, you might not necessarily have to be able to totally convince them. You might just have to ignore them. But do you guys have any suggestions of things that you might be able to help? Let's say one parent believes it, another parent doesn't, or how would you, or like a grandparent doesn't believe it. How would you go through talking about it?
Maybe, like, I'm sure you and my mom will be willing to talk about it to other parents to see it from a parent's perspective and stuff like that. I don't really know. That's a hard one.
I mean, there's the basic things of, like, is there a video online that you can show somebody that that might be similar to the things you're feeling, that you could say, look, here's validation. This is somebody else who's feeling the same. This is how I feel. Is there a book or an article that you can have them read? That kind of dimensionalizes the problem, but doesn't allow the information to come from you. The information comes from a, like, neutral third party, if you will.
So, also what you could do,
Go ahead.
This is on the Unstuck page, so you could show them Unstuck, or you could bring them to a meeting with your therapist.
Yeah, certainly that can help sometimes too. The therapist can be that person. I think that there could be ways that you use other issues that people are familiar with. Mental health is certainly something that is getting more attention these days. So people are starting to believe that, okay, it is something that we have to take seriously. So it may not, you may say, I have OCD. You may be able to use another diagnosis that somebody else has to convince them, look, this thing is a real issue, and it's not something that's no big deal, like you wrote here. Like you might show them or discuss bipolar disorder or schizophrenia or something like that, that can dimensionalize the fact that these are real issues that people go through. And the hard thing, I think, with mental health is that it's hard to picture. I continually want to have and am trying to understand how Vanessa feels when she's going through and has a big OCD worry. So I'm constantly going, is it painful? Like, some of the questions I was asking her earlier were to help me understand, because I'm still, like, the way she described it, being cloud or being dirty, that was new information for me. And that's helpful because it's hard for me to understand what she's going through. So I'm still trying to figure out what it is. And there was a book I read a little while ago. When a Family Member Has OCD by John Hirschfeld. And that helped me realize to start thinking about OCD as more of like a physical pain as opposed to just something that's going on in your brain. So I don't know. Hopefully that kind of helped you ask the question, answer the question a little bit, Megan. Treya, yeah, she's doing okay.
I am.
Still dealing with some issues here, but you know, we work on it, and she continues to work on it. And everybody, we are going to be at the OCD conference in July, which is down in Washington D.C. So this year we only have to drive to it, which is cool. We're not going to be showing the film, but we will have a booth, and if you're going or know someone's going, tell them to stop by. We're going to be doing some live streaming there. We'll have stickers to hand out, DVDs for sale, T-shirts for sale, and you can talk to these guys. Jake's going to be there too, so we're going to have a good presence this year in the OCD conference, and it is a fantastic conference. And definitely a chance if you're thinking or on the fence about going. Highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Right? What would you say is your favorite thing about the OCD conference?
I like the candy that they give out.
I like to go trick-or-treating in the booth, so I like bring my bag and then I go around every like 20 minutes and gather candy, and then it's like Halloween all over again.
And what about people that you meet?
I
love really nice.
We always meet new people there, and we spend the whole time with them. We met Treya there.
Yeah, and her sister.
And last year we met all of the kids from the film. We all finally got to meet, and this year Jake is coming, and yeah.
So here's a question from Jonathan. How do you clear your thoughts when your mind is like really racing? So like last night when she was, after the exposure was done, Vanessa had a really hard time. She was crying for a while. It was really, we just let her sit on the street for a little bit. How were you able to kind of clear your thoughts?
I got distracted from it. I just kept thinking like, it's over, you're fine, you're good.
Did you get distracted because of my constant remarks about how I wanted a Starbucks Frappuccino?
No. Oh yeah, my
Reward, right? Yeah, there was, sometimes rewards and incentives have been useful with Vanessa.
I got Helix Gel.
Yep, there was an app, a free app that she was able, and that she knew that she would get if she was able to complete the exposure last night. So that
there are other rewards, like our cat behind this thing. He's making a big noise in that basket.
What are you playing with?
I don't like that.
Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. And anyway, we've been on for a while, and we want to thank everybody for joining in. Stay on for maybe another minute or so, and just remind you that if you want to see Unstuck, I'm going to put the link in a second for the free webinar that we're going to be doing with the Peace of Mind Foundation. The Peace of Mind Foundation, if you're not familiar with them, fantastic organization run out of Houston. They have therapy services. They run OCD Challenge, which is kind of like an online therapy program. They do a lot of outreach
and they give out a lot of candy.
You can see candy's a big part of therapy. In fact, the funny thing is a lot of therapists will kind of like say, if you try this, here, you get a piece of Hershey's Kiss. So that candy tends to be a thing that is a good incentive.
It is.
Right? Rojas used it a lot.
It's awesome.
Question here. You're having OCD issues with evenness, and I'm finding it hard to get help. Therapists see it as a bad behavior. Oh, you mean like evening out, like if I have to touch one part, I might have to touch another, right? Yeah, Vanessa necessarily hasn't had to deal with that. I'm trying to think.
Sometimes I do.
You do?
I used to like chew on one side and then chew on the other side and then chew in the middle. I got over that though. I mean, I don't really have any like examples of that would be exactly helpful in this situation. But like, I don't know. I used to not be able to like put 2 feet on one step because I felt that it would like throw off a pattern. So like 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot. I couldn't put 2 feet on one step.
Yeah, even this is definitely I think can be compulsion, and also like in certain ways like an obsession. There was like thing for a while, stepping on a crack. But the evening out is certainly an OCD issue, and I'm sure you can find things online about that. Um, I think Jake had issues with that. Always had to walk around things in a certain way, touch certain tiles on the floor, left, right, in a certain pattern. So it certainly is things. Sharif from the film always said like if he would like bump into something on his right shoulder, he had to bump into it on his left. Like so, they were definitely evening out is certainly an issue.
I remember in Murder on the Oriental, and Something Express,
Mm-hmm.
the guy had OCD and he was like a detective and he stepped in dog poo, so he had to step in dog poo with the other foot, and that was pretty gross.
Yeah, but to the last part of your comment, Diana, it is unfortunate that certain therapists that there is such variety of information and types of beliefs out there in the therapeutic community, and even sometimes it's hard for a therapist to decide what's a manipulation and what might be OCD, or what might be the issue, and what might be just be defiance.
Yeah. Also, now my mom's telling me to talk about this. Rewards are and why they're important.
You can hand away from your mouth now.
Sorry. Because it gives me an incentive to
push.
Yeah, to do exposures and to push, so that I get what I want.
Yeah, if that works, that's good. I mean, we also found with Vanessa too for a while, it was easier if we gave her a choice. If she had a little control of the exposure that she would do, that made a big issue. If we said, okay, you can do this hard thing or this hard thing, and she was able to choose, it made it a little easier because she felt like she was choosing the thing that she wanted to do rather than us telling her what she had to do.
I think I can't decide between my favorite reward. We got a cat once, and we also got iPhone 8. So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to say rewards is the only way to go. There are certain other factors into everybody getting their phones, but it just happened to work out that promotions that companies were running, as well as exposure therapies that, in certain times, as parents, you make compromises for things that you were going to do later on anyway, and you do them earlier because it just works. But, incentives don't have to necessarily be monetary. They can be something like Vanessa, an app is something really that she likes. Sometimes it's being able to make slime. Sometimes it's more screen time. Early on, we had a lot, and I know a lot of parents have had a lot of success with the idea to say, like, okay, you do this, you get an extra 2 minutes on your phone. You do this, you get an extra 2 minutes watching a show or reading a book or, getting a bazooka, something small. It can work. You just kind of figure out what works for you. Anyway, thank you very much. Last one, is there online therapy? We do know that there is an app called No OCD, and it's run by an organization called treatmyocd.com, and they run they have like an online treatment therapy. I believe Natasha Daniels, who is a therapist and runs a great online practice. She has a course that you can take. Parents, I think it's for parents. It's also for people with OCD, especially for kids. Her site is called anxioustoddlers.com. I'm going to put all these in I can't reply to your comment right now, Diane, but I'm going to put the Anxious Toddlers link right here, and you can look up that. I think it's anxioustoddlers.com. I think that's what it is. Yeah. And then can you stop in that? And No OCD is an app on the iPhone. I think it might be available for Android, but their website is also, I think it's treatmyocd.com. It's another good resource. Also, Stuart, Ralph, who runs the OCD Stories. If you're into podcasts, fantastic podcasts. He has advocates. He has therapists. He has guests. You know, every few weeks there's great advice and insight into, you know, personal stories as well as therapeutic ideas, and you know, that's a fantastic resource as well. But hopefully we'll see some of you on June 27th for our free live stream with the Peace of Mind Foundation, or we'll see some of you in late July at the OCD conference. And please like our Facebook page, and if you go to our website, ocdkidsmovie.com, sign up for our mailing list so you'll get the first notice when Unstuck is available to stream for everybody in a few weeks. All right, talk to you soon. Thanks for joining.